It started on a night no one expected, a night when Can Yaman's words would echo across the world. He wasn't on a red carpet, nor at a glamorous event. This time, it was different. He was standing under the rain, outside a quiet theater in Rome, surrounded by a few fans who had waited for hours just to see him. Someone shouted from the crowd, "Do you still think about Demet?" Can smiled faintly, looking down for a moment. He didn't answer right away. The silence was so deep that even the sound of raindrops felt loud. Then, slowly, he looked up and said the words that would send shockwaves through every corner of social media, "I'll protect her, always. No one will ever hurt her again." The world froze. That one sentence, spoken softly and with so much emotion, carried more power than any interview he had ever given. Within minutes, it was trending everywhere. #Can Yaman Promise, #Protect Demet, #World in Shock. But what no one knew that night was that this promise, those few words, came from a place much deeper than anyone imagined. It wasn't just about friendship. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was about guilt. Because years before that rainy night, something had happened between them, something that broke both of them in ways the public never saw. Back when they were filming together, Can and Demet were inseparable. They laughed between takes, finished each other's sentences, shared secrets no one else knew. But fame came fast, and fame can be cruel. Every photo, every glance, every rumor turned into a headline. And soon, what had been pure and real became heavy with expectation. Can grew distant. Demet tried to hold on. But the pressure was unbearable. One night, after yet another argument about the press and privacy, Demet had whispered to him, "You promised you'd never let this world destroy us." And he hadn't answered. He had walked away. That silence was the moment everything changed. Years passed. They went their separate ways, new projects, new people, new cities. But Can never forgot that last night, or the look in her eyes when she realized he was letting go. Now, standing in the rain years later, his voice breaking as he spoke those words, "I'll protect her forever," wasn't a new vow. It was an old one, finally spoken out loud. As the crowd around him fell silent, someone caught his expression on camera, a mix of sadness, relief, and truth. The clip spread like wildfire. Within hours, fan accounts began comparing it to Demet's old interviews, where she had once said, "When he looks at me, I feel safe." The connection was undeniable. The story wasn't dead. The world was witnessing its quiet rebirth. What happened next would turn a simple sentence into an international phenomenon, and force both Can and Demet to confront the one thing they had both been avoiding, the truth about what still tied them together. When the video of Can Yaman saying "I'll protect her forever" hit the internet, it was like lightning striking in the middle of a calm night. Within hours, millions had watched it. Hashtags flooded every platform, #World in Shock, #Can and Demet, #The Promise, and journalists were calling it the most emotional declaration of his career. TV shows replayed the clip on loop. One Italian host said live on air, "He didn't just speak, he confessed." Another Turkish outlet asked, "Was this love, regret, or redemption?" But the person everyone wanted to hear from, Demet, remained silent. Her team was the first to panic. Her phone didn't stop buzzing. Managers, producers, friends, everyone wanted to know how she would respond. She didn't. She sat quietly in her living room in Istanbul, staring at her phone, replaying the same 12-second clip over and over again. The way he said it, it wasn't for the cameras. It was real. His eyes said it all. That same softness, that same tone she remembered from years ago, the one he used only when he wasn't acting. Her best friend Ashley, sitting beside her, finally broke the silence. "Demet, you know what that means, right?" Demet smiled faintly, a sad smile. "Yes," she whispered. "But I don't know if the world is ready to hear what it really means." Because what the world didn't know was that years ago, before their separation, there had been a moment, a very private one, where Can had made that exact same promise to her. It was on the set of their series. It was a late night, and they had just finished an emotional scene together. Demet had been crying, not for the camera this time, but because of something that had happened earlier. Harsh words from critics, rumors that hurt. She was exhausted, fragile. Ken had found her alone, sitting in the dark corner of the set. He had knelt beside her, gently lifted her chin, and said quietly, "No one will ever hurt you again. I promise." And she had believed him. That night had become their secret, one of those moments that would never make it to interviews or behind-the-scenes videos. It was their own little world of truth, hidden behind all the lights and fame. So when she heard him repeat those words years later, publicly, the memory hit her like a wave. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was unfinished emotion. Meanwhile, the internet was exploding. Fans were dissecting every possible meaning. Some said it was romantic. Some said it was friendly. Others insisted it was his public confession of love. In Rome, Can's team was overwhelmed. Calls from production companies, magazines, networks, everyone wanted him to speak again. But he didn't. He refused every interview request. "Let them talk," he said simply. "I said what I needed to say." Privately, though, he was shaken. A close friend revealed, he didn't plan to say it. It just came out. It was like something he'd been holding in for years finally escaped. The media frenzy reached Demet's management. They advised her to stay quiet. "If you respond, it'll fuel the fire," they said. But that night, unable to sleep, she opened her laptop and wrote a few words. Not to post, not to share, but to process what she was feeling. "He said he'd protect me again. But does he even know how much I've already protected him, from the truth, from the pain, from myself?" She closed the laptop and stared out the window. The moonlight glowed on her face. And deep down, she knew, his promise wasn't for the cameras. It was for her. Still, questions haunted her. What triggered it? Why now? What made him break the silence after all these years? She didn't have the answers yet. But soon, she would. Because the next morning, an unexpected message would appear on her phone, one that would change everything. The morning after the storm, Istanbul was quiet. But Demet's heart wasn't. She hadn't slept. The words "I'll protect you forever" kept echoing in her mind like a melody she couldn't turn off. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. Unknown number. No profile photo. She hesitated, then opened it. The message was simple. "I didn't mean to say it that way. But I meant every word." She froze. There was no name, but she knew exactly who it was from. For a few seconds, she couldn't breathe. The memories came rushing back, their last fight, their long silence, the thousands of unspoken words that had lived between them for years. Her fingers hovered over the screen, trembling. She typed, erased, then typed again. Finally, she wrote, "Why now?" His reply came almost instantly. "Because I saw something I shouldn't have. And I realized I stayed silent for too long." Demet's pulse quickened. She stared at those words, confused, curious, a little afraid. What did he mean he saw something? Meanwhile, miles away in Rome, Ken was sitting by the window of his apartment, the same message thread open on his phone. His reflection in the glass looked tired, older, haunted. The night before the promise, he had been watching an interview. It wasn't about him. It was Demet, talking about her latest project. The interviewer had asked, "What's the biggest lesson love has taught you?" She had smiled faintly and said, "That protection doesn't always mean presence. Sometimes it means staying away so the person you love can heal." That was the moment that broke him. He had turned off the TV, walked out into the rain, and when the fans shouted her name, the words had just slipped out. "I'll protect her forever." Now, as he looked at her message, "Why now?" He knew she deserved the truth. He started typing, "Because I never stopped caring. Because I saw how strong you became without me. And because I realized my silence hurt you more than anything I ever said." He stared at the words for a moment, then sent them. Back in Istanbul, Demet read the message again and again. The pain in his words was real. The same man who once built walls around himself was now tearing them down with honesty. Tears filled her eyes. Not because she was sad, but because she finally felt seen. "You don't have to protect me anymore, Can," she wrote. "I'm not the same girl who needed saving." His answer came after a long pause, "I know. But I still need to keep my promise, not for you, but for me." That line hit differently. It wasn't about control. It was about guilt. Redemption. A man trying to make peace with his past. For the first time in years, they were talking. Not through interviews, not through hints, but through raw truth. Hours passed between their replies. Sometimes silence, sometimes long paragraphs. It felt like a confession, years of weight finally lifted, piece by piece. And then, near midnight, Demet sent something that made him fall completely silent. It was an old photo, one the world had never seen. Taken during the final days of their show. She was smiling, looking at the camera, while he was looking at her. The caption she added was short, "I never needed protection. I just needed honesty." He stared at the photo until the sun began to rise. Then, without thinking, he typed one last message, "Then let this be my first honest one, I never stopped loving you." He didn't know if she'd reply. He didn't even expect her to. But what she did next would turn everything upside down. The next morning, the world woke up to chaos. What had been a private exchange between two people was now the headline of every magazine and trending tag on every platform. Someone, no one knew who, had leaked screenshots of their messages. The short but powerful lines flooded Twitter and Instagram stories in seconds. "You don't have to protect me anymore, Can. Then let this be my first honest one, I never stopped loving you." The words were everywhere. Millions of fans were reposting, translating, analyzing every punctuation mark as if decoding a love letter written to all of them. But for Can and Demet, it wasn't poetry. It was pain. The world had just torn open a wound they were finally starting to heal. In Rome, Can's phone was exploding with calls from his agent, from producers, from journalists. His first reaction was disbelief. He hadn't even saved their conversation, and now the entire world was reading it. He threw his phone onto the couch, running his hands through his hair. "How did this happen?" he muttered. His manager's voice on the other end was shaking, "You have to deny it. Say it's fake, say it's AI generated, anything. Just protect your image." But Can didn't answer. His image was the last thing on his mind. All he could think about was Demet, how humiliated she must be feeling. In Istanbul, she was sitting on her balcony, scrolling through the chaos. Her hands trembled. The photos, the headlines, the comments, it's real. He still loves her. Are they together again? It was too much. She didn't cry. Not this time. She just stared blankly, feeling the strange mix of anger and heartbreak. He had promised to protect her. And yet, somehow, his words had once again left her exposed. Her assistant burst into the room, panicked. "Demet, the press is outside. They're waiting downstairs." Demet took a deep breath. "Let them wait." She stood up, calm but shaking inside. The world wanted answers, but she wasn't ready to give them any. Across the sea, Can finally posted something. A black background. Just 2 words, "My fault." No explanation. No defense. No hashtags. That one post only fueled the storm. Some called him brave. Others accused him of irresponsibility. But fans, the ones who had followed their journey since the beginning, saw the truth. They knew that this wasn't scandal. It was heartbreak made public. Hours later, Demet broke her silence. She didn't post a picture or a statement. She simply shared a quote in white text on a dark background: "When love becomes noise, it stops being love." The entire internet froze. It was clear, she wasn't angry, but she was done being part of the circus. What they had built years ago had always belonged to them alone, not the world. And yet, destiny wasn't finished with them. Late that night, as the storm began to quiet down, a single car stopped in front of Demet's house. The driver stepped out, handed a small envelope to the security guard, and left. Inside the envelope was a single handwritten note. No name, no signature. Just one sentence: "If the world can't let you rest, let me take the blame." Demet knew who it was from. She folded the note carefully and placed it inside her journal. The same one where she had once written her first lines about him years ago. And for the first time in a long while, she whispered his name out loud, quietly, as if trying to forgive him with her voice. Can, but what neither of them knew was that fate still had one more twist waiting. Because while the world thought this was the end, the silence before the peace, one final act was about to turn everything around. The world had gone silent again. The storm had passed, the headlines had faded, and the noise that once surrounded them had become an echo. But for Can Yaman and Demet Özdemir, the silence wasn't peace yet, it was the weight of everything that had been said, and everything that still lingered unspoken. A week after the leak, Can disappeared from public view. No appearances, no posts, no sightings. Fans speculated he had left Italy. Some said he was in Cappadocia, others swore they saw him in Bodrum. But no one really knew. Demet, meanwhile, had thrown herself into work. Her days were long, her nights quiet. But when she came home each evening, she always saw the same envelope sitting on her nightstand, the one he had sent, with the words, "If the world can't let you rest, let me take the blame." She hadn't replied. Not yet. Maybe because she didn't know how. Until one night, as she stood on her balcony watching the city lights flicker, she got a message. It was from an Italian number. "I'm where it all began. I had to come back. Just once." Her heart stopped. She knew exactly what that meant. A few hours later, she was on a flight to Rome. No makeup, no assistant, no manager. Just her and her thoughts. The plane landed at dawn. She didn't even check into a hotel, she went straight to the place where they had filmed their very first scene together years ago. The old cafe by the corner. Still there. Still quiet. And there he was. Sitting outside, alone, coffee in hand, eyes lost in the morning light. When he looked up and saw her, he froze. For a moment, it was as if the years, the fame, the pain, all of it had never existed. Just two people, face to face again, where everything once started. "You came," he said quietly. "You asked me to," she replied. He smiled, almost in disbelief. "I didn't think you would." "Neither did I," she said, softly. They sat for a while in silence. Just the sound of cups, the distant chatter, the heartbeat of a city waking up. Then, finally, she spoke. "You can't protect me from the world, Can. You never could. You were never supposed to." He looked down, his voice breaking. "I know. I just didn't know what else to do. Every time I stayed silent, it felt like I was failing you." She reached out, her hand gently brushing his. "You didn't fail me. You just forgot that I was strong too." His eyes glistened. "I never stopped loving you, Demet." She smiled sadly. "And I never stopped wishing you peace." A tear slipped down his cheek. He didn't try to hide it. "Then this is it?" he asked softly. "No more promises?" "No," she said, squeezing his hand. "Just one more." He looked up, waiting. "Promise me you'll protect yourself this time." The line hung in the air like a prayer. Ken nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "I will. I swear." They sat there as the sun rose, the light spilling over the streets of Rome, the same city that had seen them fall apart and find themselves again. No cameras, no crowds, no statements. Just two souls finally at peace with what they had been, and what they could never be. Hours later, they walked away in opposite directions. Neither looked back. They didn't need to. Some goodbyes are not endings, they're transformations. That evening, Kim posted one last thing on his social media. A photo of the sunrise over Rome with the caption, "I kept my promise." And she kept her strength. Demet posted nothing. She didn't have to. Because sometimes silence is not absence, it's gratitude. And as the world scrolled through their photos, unaware of the quiet closure behind them, somewhere in the distance, two hearts finally found rest. "I'll protect you forever," he had said once. And in a way, he did. Not by standing in front of her, but by finally stepping aside.